Today is a Veterans Day of sorts because we have one of the members, the original members, I believe, of the KISS Army with us to talk about the goings on in the latest chapter of the regime. Because I can't even say the new regime because it's still KISS after they've retired, making announcements after the show they played, after vowing to never play shows again. So Kelly, I like Kiss. I don't dislike Kiss. Let me be clear on that. But I was never a huge Kiss fan. Kiss, as like when I was growing up, Kiss was already into kind of their greatest hits era. When I became aware of them, Kiss has only released a few studio records in the last 30 years. Like everything was kind of front loaded with them. And I get it. And they've kind of talked about this a little bit too, that it's not advantageous to them to pump out new music because it could only tarnish their legacy if people don't like it. And they've directly said that. And again, they're if nothing else, Kiss is a brand. So that is the kind of stuff that they think about. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's how they run their business and things like that. But so I've only really grown up with Kiss the brand, not Kiss putting out new music that people were getting excited about and was on the radio and things like that. Um, so for me, a lot of my entry point into Kiss is Kiss movies, which I love Kiss's movies more so than their music, really, for myself. But the Kiss Army, the Kiss fans of whatever stature or rank were treated to the Kiss Cruise, the landlocked edition, because it wasn't on a boat. It was just in a venue in Las Vegas, where Kiss, the retired band who was never going to play again and be replaced by avatars, the human versions of them played another show and then made a bunch of announcements, including stuff about the avatars. They, of course, did a tribute to Ace Frehley, who passed away recently. But they also made some announcements about movies. So this is why I'm excited this. So Kelly, what are your thoughts on all this? And I think we should start because we've talked about Kiss's retirement, things like that on here before. Are you surprised that they have now gotten specific and said like, well, it's not a tour, we don't have our makeup on, so it doesn't count as breaking our word? Are you surprised that Kiss is out playing shows and we're probably always going to do that?
Yeah. Not surprised at all. That I mean, as long as they can draw a breath, and they can get a dollar or two for drawing a breath, they will do that. So yeah, I mean, you just can't take them serious anymore. I really think if they do any other farewell tours, it needs to end with lethal injections. I think that this needs to be the way it's like, okay, now get on the Gertie because you said this was your last show and we're going to make darn sure it is, even though their avatars will carry on from there. But if that's what they wanted, then let's just make sure. So, so one, I am a big proponent of lethal injection if there is another one there. I do also think makeup or not, if you're on the stage playing instruments in front of a bunch of people playing your songs, that's a concert. That's playing, I think. And they have toured and played without their makeup at different points in time in the career as well. So wasn't surprised at all. This has always been largely a money mill for particularly the two remaining original members of Kiss, who really are, everybody else is a hired hand in that process. It's not a band anymore. You got co-CEOs and employees that go in and do that. Not a whole lot different than Trans-Siberian Orchestra, in my opinion, at this point, from that. No, wasn't really surprised at all. A little irritated that they did a tribute to Ace in this because that can't be genuine. There's they have spent a lot more time kicking dirt on him over the years, talking about how he was hard to work with, he wasn't any good, and all those types of things. And then to kind of provide a heartfelt, oh, this is just I'm so hurt by this, or it's like, no, no, you're not. It's just, if there were some minor merchandising opportunities that are now lost, that's the only tears that you're going to be shedding for this. So I don't, I found that offensive. I think they could
On
have.
Kiss's official Amazon merchandise store, because Amazon does like printed shirts for certain brands. One of them is Kiss. So it's like a print on demand thing. They now have started offering the Ace solo album cover shirt.
Sure, they do. Yeah, of course they did. Yeah, and I'm sure
That's a new entry on there.
yeah, yeah, and I'm sure the Fraley estate is getting a big cut of that. I'm sure. So um, it's like WWE when Kevin Nash and Scott Hall left. Their characters of Diesel and Razor Ramon stayed there, and they actually plugged new guys into it. It's very much like Kiss in that. And so even though they created the character and kind of were the character, the WWE own it. Same thing with Kiss on that. So I'm sure every one of those dollars goes into Gene and Paul's pocket as well. So yeah, so I was a Kiss Army member. I was dishonorably discharged somewhere around Dynasty. Was I think when I was made for loving you, baby. I went to my captain and said that I would like to be discharged from the army at this point in time.
You became a conscientious objector.
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't bring it anymore. So having been out, of service for a while, I can look back with fresh eyes on this. Um, so and of course, so yeah, they're gonna update the avatar. It's good because the OG avatars sucked. They're pretty horrible. So they're gonna keep trying to make those better. I still think it's a I just have to see this thing in action, but I don't think it's going to be an overly rewarding experience for individuals. You know what would be a great experience for individuals is if they were to pair themselves up with an edgy magician and do a show of their songs and the magician going together. But Alice Cooper is doing that with Chris Angel, and I'm going to see it, and so I'm pretty fired up about that. So that would work. So they've ripped off Alice in the past. Maybe they'll work in a magician or a juggler or something down the road. But um, yeah, the Avatar update, sure, believe it when I see it in terms of this thing being an ongoing thing. Although I got to think the Sphere in Las Vegas seems like that could be a really good platform to maybe do something like that. So I don't know. Maybe that can eventually bear fruit in a venue, but you've got to have it to me a venue like that can really make it happen in the way that it needs to for it to be cost by. It's already established. The infrastructure's there and all that, but we'll see. But the movie stuff's interesting. I'm not particularly interested in seeing a biopic about the group because one, I'm sure the biopic is not going to be kind to Peter, Chris, or Ace because and I'm not sure at this point what level of executive control Paul and Gene have over it, but if they do, they will be, Gandhi-like in their things, I'm sure. So I don't know. I mean, if it's a more legit bio where they talk about like why Ace left, I mean, there is some he wasn't managing certain substances real well that he was taking on a regular basis. That clearly had an impact, but there was also judgments, so judgment's not great going at that time, but also the musical direction he was pointing out very accurately, I would like to point out, hey, we're going in a crappy place here. Why don't we go back to doing what we were doing, which is kind of highly accessible guitar rock, and uh, that's not where Gene and Paul felt the money was at. So not excited about the biopic in particular. The other, the more of a documentary one, I've heard a couple things and read a couple things about that. To the degree it's kind of backstage footage and stuff like that. Although kind of imagine that could get kind of wild. I would think some of the backstage footage. Uh, but I mean, some of that might be interesting, particularly just seeing how that stage show came to life in different venues and stuff. That'd be all right. But so those two are good. So you've mentioned before, you mentioned when we were getting ready for this show, the three Kiss movies. And I think you've outlined for this before. So I certainly know the Kiss and the Phantom of the Park one, which
The
um,
best one.
a special effects tour de force, you know, as well as robbed from the Oscars.
I was gonna say, I feel like the Academy snubbed it just because it wouldn't be fair to anyone else.
Yeah, because it was the range, by all characters, and this was an Ace. Ace was having a little more of a rough time, and I think actually for both him and Peter Chris, they overdubbed all their lines because they were intelligible otherwise. But so that's not great. But you could understand what Gene and Paul were saying, but you couldn't necessarily understand that they were acting. You were so it was a thing there. And again, the special effects, um, the Sci-Fi Channel would envy in terms of some of the things there. So what are the other, do you count Detroit Rock City as a Kiss movie?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it was produced by them and
Okay. I'll
heavily
go with
features
that
their
then.
music. Yeah.
So the third one is that's in the Scooby-Doo world you're going? Okay. All
Scooby-Doo
right. It
meets Kiss. Yeah, absolutely. That's a feature movie that was released.
was a feature
And
movie
they did new songs for it.
and several episodes too, right? They did not,
I
Kiss was in a
believe
couple of
so, but
them.
the Scooby-Doo meets Kiss movie, Kiss actually recorded songs for
And I'll have to check those out because I'm sure they're great. So,
it. One
um,
is, and I'm not kidding, a song about ascots.
super. That's great. So,
Yeah,
so
Kiss
have,
has appeared on a number of TV shows, but I do like their movies. Unironically, I love Phantom of the Park. I like bad movies. So that definitely scratches that itch. Detroit Rock City, I think, is fun. I actually the only reason I watched it is I was on kind of like an Edward Furlong kick, like catching up on all of his stuff. And what it's about for anyone who hasn't seen it, it's a group of kids who are planning to go to a Kiss concert, and then of course their parents are standing in the way of that because Kiss is evil and gonna rot their brains or whatever. So it's them trying to get to the concert, which they eventually get to, and you see Kiss perform, and there's Kiss music throughout it. Kiss members made cameos and they produced it and everything. It's not as considering it is essentially just a Kiss commercial of a movie to go see Kiss live. It's not as bad as so like it's a similar, I guess, setup to Metallica did a movie like that called Through the Never that took place all around a Metallica show. Only in the Metallica movie, it's a crew member who played by an actor. A crew member has got to go out and do something for them, and outside of the show, it's the world is turning into like a post-apocalyptic kind of thing, and he's got to accomplish whatever task it is. But in that, they keep cutting back to the Metallica show. So it ends up being like a 3 hour movie where you watch the whole Metallica show and like an hour of this story in there. So I actually think the pacing and the way that everything's utilized is way better in Detroit Rock City because the Metallica movie ends up failing as a concert film because it keeps getting interrupted by the movie parts, and it fails as a movie when it shows you a full Metallica concert essentially throughout it. So it doesn't work in either way. Whereas I actually think Detroit Rock City nails it. That tone where you feel like you don't have to like Kiss or like that music. You can just enjoy the movie. If you like Kiss, you'll get more out of it. And then who doesn't love Scooby Doo?
that's true. That's fair. Yeah, although I think kind of in this genre, and I think this actually should be a Panda movie review show, which we'll need to get to at some point in time, is Roadie. Uh,
Okay.
and so, starring Meatloaf and Art Carney, his dad. in the show, who is a very inventive guy. He can kind of build all sorts of crazy things and fix anything, and runs into a young lady who is a groupie for Alice Cooper, and her whole desire is to meet Alice, and so lots of Alice mentions. A really good remix of Road Rats for the soundtrack on there, and they eventually do meet Alice, and it's a tour de force. It's a brief scene, but you get a little bit of pain. We get that as well. So I think in terms of a movie like that, um, not not layer upon layer in the movie, but Blondie shows up in it, so you get a bunch of cameos there, and it's a fun. I think it's a really fun movie. I'm surprised more people haven't talked about it or hasn't caught on as kind of a cult thing. But as we think about Alice movies, we will not be doing a review of Monster Dog ever.
I love
We
Monster Dog.
hate Monster Dog. Um, but
I think you
Brody
need to
would be good.
rewatch it.
Yeah, I don't know if I can. I can watch the first 5 minutes of it because that's Identity Crises,
Right.
and that's pretty awesome. So, but after that, it's not great. Um, but Suck still is, I think, another one. I don't know why it doesn't have a bigger cult following because that is a ton of fun. So, and Calico Cooper gets a little cameo in that one. So that would be, I'd recommend those over most Kiss movies. But I guess we're not talking about them today, even though I snuck them in. But yeah, so they're awful busy for a retired band. They're doing a
Yeah,
lot.
they're doing a lot. I totally agree with you with the Ace stuff. I think it's weird because they made a big point of him not being involved in the farewell tour and all that kind of stuff, and lots of bad blood, obviously, between them. And then as soon as he dies, there's a tribute to him and a T-shirt for sale at their Amazon store. So it's very Kiss of them, I
Very
think.
much so.
Yeah. The movies so it should be interesting. I like movies about music. I think the problem, a lot of biopics tend to gloss over things, and that's, I think, expected, and I think everybody understands that. But when the band is involved as producers, sometimes that can go crazy, like the Queen movie. That's a movie about a band called Queen in a totally fictitious I was never, even when I saw it, like I'm not the biggest Queen fan in the world. I like Queen, but not super knowledgeable of them. But even I knew watching it, I was like, I don't think any of this is true. I think this is completely made up nonsense. And it turns out it is. None of that's true. It's all completely made up nonsense. Even like the core of the movie, which is a breakup because Freddie Mercury wants to do a solo record, that never happened. Queen never broke it. Queen is they never broke up after Freddie Mercury died. They just kept going. And the movie even ignores that. It just mentions at the very end that Adam Lambert is the singer now, completely ignoring that there were two other singers in between there. They even made a studio record with one of them. So, I mean, it's Queen never stopped. They never broke up. But during the time in the movie of the breakup, Queen was what we would call canceled now because of going and playing segregated shows in South Africa and only for white people. So they didn't want to talk about that. So they're like, you can't put that in there. Let's create drama a different way. So I worry that that's where it's going to end up happening with the Kiss biopic because they'll be in charge of it. Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley are going to be musical prodigies who invented rock, and anybody they didn't like was just in their way and a terrible person.
Lifted Ace Frehley up,
Yeah,
Hey, for your solo album, you should do New York Groove Ace, because this will be the song that'll do well for you.
we're giving you this one.
Yeah, because we know you're probably gonna have the weaker material otherwise. So we do it, it'd be a super massive hit. But maybe this will salvage your album. So Yeah, it'll be good. That's why I think in terms of rock movies and all that, while I will always kind of put towards the top, the kids are all right for the Who because it is interviews and performances throughout the years all cut together. So there's not actors telling a storyline. And here's how Pete ran into John into us along the street and all that. It's just you kind of get the backstory of how the group came together. There's no like voiceovers of, and then the Who's big break was this or that. You just kind of see the history of them, and you certainly get a much stronger idea of the personalities, which were strong amongst the Who. And so you get that. The only, pro- it's not even really produced piece, is that they did decide to take a camera crew to hang out with Keith Moon and Ringo Starr. And they sat down and were talking at the camera. And so that was kind of like the only footage that was intended to just, that wasn't kind of more organic of a here they're being interviewed for this or that. And so I've always thought that that is a super fun watch, with the exception of the Woodstock footage, which gets a little tiresome, but that's not their fault. So, I'd highly recommend if you're looking for a good rock and roll film, Kids Are All Right is a good way to go.
Yeah, there's a lot of good documentaries. There's a lot of good biopics. This is gonna sound weird to say, especially because they're you would think it would be really similar to the way I imagine a Kiss thing would be, but the it's not a great movie. But the Motley Crue biopic that Netflix made, even though Motley Crue was involved in it, some of the worst elements of them are still in the movie. So what they did cleverly is they would show the worst parts, but then follow it up with something that kind of humanized them again right afterwards. So like moving things around, and they got called out on a pretty big one. So Vince Neil killed somebody. That's he went to prison. It was a whole thing. Um, they Vince Neil also lost a child, and they move those things a lot closer together in the timeline so that you're back on Vince Neil's side a little bit quicker than you might be in the real timeline of life after he kills somebody in a drunk driving accident. So that sort of thing. So it's not perfect, but it is surprising considering the band was involved. It does surprisingly show the worst parts of them in there. It's not a whole Queen thing where they're like, we're just going to make stuff up. Show that. So it's not a great movie is more my problem with it. It does have a very TV movie feel to it, if that makes sense.
Kind of the behind the music kind of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. And I think it's fairly impressive that there's only, for Keith Moon, only one death that he, he was closely indirectly involved with, given his insanity. But that's it's a good thing. And then as long as we're talking Keith, one other thing, Full Moon book on written by his personal assistant seems very good. Highly recommend that as a read. There's a couple good sections on when Keith was on movie sets because he wanted to get in to be more of an actor. He was in a couple of things, and there's a nice set of stories on how he was driving anyone associated with the movie completely crazy because he's Keith Moon and it's what he does. So we'll see on that. So I'm basically saying watch other things, read other things other than this Kiss stuff. I guess that's my ending type of thing. So yeah, I'm not going to be lining up anywhere soon to watch a biopic or the documentary.
I'm I
At
think I'm
some
more
point,
interested in the documentary.
yeah, I think of the two, that's the one there's a greater chance I'll watch. I'm not going to go see the Avatars anytime soon.
The,
And
the Avatar thing is interesting too because now they're claiming so there for anybody who doesn't know that at their final show, they unveiled these avatars and the response was not what they were hoping for. It was pretty unanimous that people were not impressed with this. And now, to be fair, Kiss has been saying forever, as long as I can remember, that at some point Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons would retire, but Kiss would continue with no original members. That is something that they've always said, that Kiss was going to continue. It's a brand, it's bigger than any of the members. Like like Kelly pointed out, they just plug different people into the characters and keep going. So I think what I expected, at least, and probably what most people when you hear something like that, is it's going to be hired musicians going out under the Kiss name with the makeup on, and they'll just sit back and collect a cut of these Kiss shows that go on. And honestly, that's kind of fine. I don't think there's really a problem with that, because if any band is going to do something like that, it really makes sense for Kiss to do that. Because they're not only are they playing characters, but they like money. There's no secret that Kiss is a business first before anything else. Everybody's aware of that. So I actually think if any band was going to blaze this particular trail, it's Kiss. And I don't think people would have been too upset about it. Sure, some fans wouldn't go, but I think in general, if you put a solid band out there, like the hired guns who've been playing with them for years, with a new singer or something like that who's in the makeup, I think people would be overall, I think people would be fine with it because they're going out to see the big show and all of the theatrics and everything like that, and hearing good performances of the songs. I don't think a lot of Kiss fans would be upset, but CGI avatars is not what they were expecting, and
No.
especially CGI avatars that, let's be honest, didn't look exactly state of the art a couple years ago. And now they're trying to downplay it and say that, oh, that was always just a rough demo. And we were always going to launch this a couple years later. That's definitely not the impression that they gave when that happened. They released a bunch of behind the scenes videos talking about how amazing this was and it's ready to go. So they're definitely trying to rewrite history now and say like, oh, it was always that was always the rough kind of this is what's going to happen sneak preview, but we were always going to work on it a couple more years to make it better. No.
Nope. No, I think they need to pack all that in and take the video assets, uh, talk to the owners of the Sphere and build a show that they can just hit the button and let the money come in. Don't need to do a residency, just I got a Sphere show, the Kiss it, and occasionally update it. And then they're off and going. And then that'll work. People will go see it. They'll want to do that. So we'll see.
I just honestly I still don't understand why there isn't just a Kiss band touring. Make a Kiss show, a touring show where you have good musicians you hire to play the characters. And you can use the guys who've been playing with them for years until they're ready to retire.
Yeah, that'd work.
Yeah. That and I think most fans would probably accept it.
And prefer it over to
Yeah, oh, definitely prefer it over the avatars.
uh,
But I think most Kiss fans probably wouldn't even push that hard against it.
yeah. No, I mean they're kind of used to that's what it's been for a while, is that there's a
It's
pretty steady
it's
rotation
barely
of
them now.
who's the spaceman, who's
Yeah.
the now the drummer stuff a little different, and you had, Eric Carr and some unfortunate stuff there, but by and large, after he was gone, it's just plug and play. Eric Singer does it a lot now. He's great. He's super good. He drummed with Alice for a while. Um, but it was always kind of like, well, Alice, Kiss is doing something. Paycheck's bigger there. I gotta go. So we'll see on that. But all right, cool. Anything else you like to add before we wrap this up?
No, I think that's it. Yeah, it's I'm curious to see what happens. Would you go to an Avatar show at all? Would that be
No.
something you consider?
They do it at the Sphere. I'll consider it, but no. I mean, I really have zero interest in that. I'm not sure I'd
Just
go to a Kiss Mania show, or the touring group of, uh, Kiss, whatever they would call that, you know, Trans-Siberian Kisses, Kistra, or
yeah, I
whatever.
was just gonna say Trans-Siberian Orchestra already does this. For anybody who doesn't know, for their Christmas tour, that's not the band. It's just touring musicians who play the Christmas songs going around. The band is the metal band Savatage, who are actually going out on tour on their own despite the fact that the Trans-Siberian Orchestra version of the band will still be doing their 2 shows a night on either coast.
Yep.
So, I mean, this already exists to some degree, and Kiss just seems like the perfect thing to do. And I think a lot of people would still go see it.
Yeah, I absolutely I do. Said probably not me, but there will be a lot. So,
Yeah, there will be enough people to justify doing a yearly Kiss tour.
yeah. And when the ticket sales drop, you stop doing it. It's not that hard. So
Yeah, or you move it to like a Vegas show or something like that.
it could be done. Cool. All right. Hey, we appreciate you folks. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. What you kind of think about. We've expressed our opinions clearly. Let us know if you agree or disagree there. Give us share the video, give it a like, watch it a second time, subscribe to the Bog Panda YouTube channel. We'd really appreciate that. Helps us out. There's merchandise, there's games, free downloadable ROMs on the Bog Panda Vision portion of it. Hard No, the world's shortest podcast. There's just treasure upon treasure. What are you waiting for? Subscribe to Bog Panda. Be cool.
Bog Panda.